to James Joyce's divine and delirious comedy Finnegans Wake. In this episode, number 16, we'll hear Irish-Canadian actor and my good friend and colleague Richard Harte performing pages 75 to 81 to begin Chapter 4 of Joyce's last novel. I'm Adam Seelig, the director of the reading you'll soon hear. Thanks to all of you lovely listeners in Canada, the US, Ireland, England, Germany, Australia, and beyond who have written to One Little Goat Theatre Company by email and through our YouTube channel with enthusiastic comments on our Finnegans Wake film and podcast series. We really appreciate your eyes and ears and are delighted to be with you again with this new podcast episode. The complete films of Finnegans Wake chapters 1 and 2 are available on One Little Goat's website and YouTube channel. And more recently, we released an album of music from our film series, available through streaming services like Spotify, Apple, etc., under the highly descriptive title Finnegans Wake Music from the Film Series, which includes the Ballad of Perce O'Reilly and the 19th century folk song that gave Finnegans Wake its title. I have good news to share that in Tokyo, Japan on October 31st, I'll be screening and discussing excerpts from One Little Goat's film series with Japanese Joyceans Yuta Imazeki and Kaori Hiroshige. The event will be in both Japanese and English, and will feature excerpts from the new Japanese translation of Finnegans Wake by Dublin-based Kenji Hayakawa. Kenji has just completed his translation of Book 1, Chapter 2, an accomplishment that deserves a huge mazel tov to both Kenji and his editor, Yuta. For details on this event in Tokyo, please visit One Little Goat's website at www.onelittlegoat.org. And some sad news. Roland McHugh, whose annotations to Finnegans Wake is hands down the book we turn to most for this project, died on October 9th. His last home was in County Wicklow, not far from the Wicklow Mountains, the very source of the River Liffey that flows throughout Finnegans Wake. American John Gordon, whose online annotations to Finnegans Wake build on Roland McHugh's, paid tribute to McHugh in an email he sent to me. Gordon wrote, "One thing that keeps impressing me about Roland's annotations is how tight it is. There's virtually nothing there that is wrong, or even might be wrong." Fritz Zen says that everything ever written about Joyce, from his birth certificate to his tombstone, contains at least one error, so probably there's a wrong date or something somewhere in the book, but one definitely learns to trust it. Thank you, Roland McHugh, for your indispensable annotations, without which we could not interpret Finnegans Wake as we have. This episode is dedicated to you. Finnegans Wake is a production of One Little Goat Theatre Company. For the next 5 years, One Little Goat will film and record all 17 chapters, roughly 30 hours, of Joyce's Finnegans Wake before live audiences in various locations, screening and releasing them along the way with the aim of completing the entire book in time for its 90th birthday, May 4th of 2029. One Little Goat Theatre Company is an official charity in Canada and the United States. If you'd like to support our work, please visit us online at www.onelittlegoat.org to make a charitable donation. To get in touch with us, you'll find our email address on One Little Goat Theatre Company's website, and we'd love to hear from you. A recent poem by Canadian Caitlin Perrin complements the end of Finnegans Wake Chapter 3, where we concluded our previous podcast episode with protagonist H.C. Earwicker sleeping deeply as rain falls on Dublin. The poem is titled Rainmancer. Dreams are raindrops into other universes, and reality only leaks while we're asleep. The fluidity of dreams not only reflects reality, but, like every drop of rain, is a reality in itself. It's as if Perrin's poem, like Finnegans Wake, is building on William Blake's celebrated line, "To see a world in a grain of sand," by saying, yes, and every grain of sand is a world. Dreams mix and remix our realities, much as the dream novel that is The Wake is an extended remix of its central themes, elements, and characters, hence the recirculation of the novel's opening page overture. A recent novel by Brooklynite Anna Moskovakis expands on this remixing and recirculation of dreams, providing us with a way of viewing Chapter 4 and the wake as a whole. I'll just add that it's fitting to talk about Chapter 4 with the help of Moskovakis' novel because I picked it up at Type Books on Queen Street West after the author's Toronto reading and conversation with translator Claire Foster, and it's at the very same bookstore that we filmed and recorded Chapter 4. Here's the unnamed narrator of Moskovakis' An Earthquake is a Shaking of the Surface of the Earth. At some point I accepted as fact a theory I read once. It claimed that dreams take the experiences from our lives and disassemble them, then neutralize them through recombination, through making them into new stories, like a montage of the scraps that would otherwise be left on the cutting room floor. I don't know whose metaphor this is, maybe it's mine. The important thing is that the new stories don't always displace the old ones, they just reduce their authority, they deauthorize them. By confusing the signal, the new stories can at least partially cancel the old ones out. The important thing is, according to my memory, though of course neither my memory nor the theory is sure to be trustworthy, that it doesn't seem to matter if the new stories are themselves equally disturbing or even if they are more disturbing than the experienced events they are attempting to replace. Their role isn't to lighten things up. The work they do is only the work of disattachment, of insisting on multiplicity. Chapter 4, now deep in the dream of Finnegans Wake, and given the sleeping state of HCE, perhaps also deep in the dream of Earwicker himself, certainly insists on such multiplicity, as it takes us from HCE's surreal musings to Dublin's Phoenix Park, to a bar brawl in which attacker and defender become hard to tell apart, the dream language fluid as ever, to a showy trial or show trial, complete with witnesses and cross-examination, to a brief and intriguing glance at the letter by ALP that might vindicate HCE, to a series of telecommunications about HCE where the signals certainly get confused, to a sex scene of ALP and HCE, to a closing description of Dublin's River Liffey and invocation of the biblical psalm by the rivers of Babylon. Get ready, in other words, for some fun and fascinating stuff. Chapter 4 ends with the rivers of Babylon and begins with the Nile. The opening sentence asserts that as the lion in the zoo may remember the water lilies of the Nile, so the comatose HCE may have been dreaming of the temptresses of his past. Or in the language of the wake itself, quote, as the lion in our Tiergarten remembers the nenuphars of his Nile. It helps to know that Tiergarten is German for zoo, here spelled like tears from one's eyes. Something I love in this opening paragraph is the repetition of the phrase, it may be. Firstly, because it suggests that there may be other possibilities to consider, and possibility is the gateway to the multiplicity of dreams. And secondly, because this is the kind of rhythmic motif we encounter on the opening page of Finnegans Wake with its repetition of the phrase, not yet, a phrase that similarly casts tantalizing doubt on the when and what of the narrative. HCE imagines his posthumous reputation as a distinguished dynasty and fantasizes for a moment that he is the head of a criminal family enterprise that can crack safes in addition to eggs. Somehow, though, he finds himself now in a glass-paneled coffin. A local public body, think of them as a kind of Lions or Rotary Club, generously offers him the gift of a grave in which to bury that coffin, with HCE presumably inside. How thoughtful of them. But no, HCE blasts his way out of the unusual casket using TNT with a dynamism that would make characters known for getting into and out of tight jams, from Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner to MacGyver, proud. We then find HCE living, quote, all safe at homely the pre-senile days of his life of opulence, close quote, in solitude, surrounded by various tchotchkes. He should get up, get out, and go hunting, as survival often dictates, but instead finds himself living off, quote, his own misplaced fat. Our favorite charwoman, Kate, from the Musey Room of Chapter 1, makes an appearance on a pile of litter, described here as a filth dump in Dublin's Phoenix Park. Then from the mundane and low to the ground, we move to the metaphysical and up on high when voices of gods emerge. Quote, "Hear all highest sprack," close quote, including cameos by Krishna and Shiva. This is the low to high, down to up kind of motion we've experienced throughout the week, especially when it comes to Phoenix Park, named after the mythical bird that rises from its own fallen ashes. Lest the narrative fly too high, it reminds us, in the wake's indefatigably inventive way, that we are all mortal and of this earth. Quote, "Every mortal man of us, poem by poem, falls back into this terrene." Every mortal man of us, mortal man, Irishman, as in Murphy man, ever morphing into multiplicity through reality's dreamlike fluidity. Poem by poem, apple by apple, a sure way, as we know from Adam and Eve, to fall. Unless these pomme are pomme de terre, that is, potatoes, already down in the dirt of Phoenix Park. Or perhaps they're poems eulogizing our lives and deaths. Falls back into this terrene. Ashes to ashes, apple by apple, potato by potato, poem by poem, we all fall down into this terrain, this terroir, this large earthenware pot, which is the etymology of terrene, this large earthenware pot known as planet Earth, which can be at times delicious and at others disgusting, depending on the ingredients. Every mortal man of us, poem by poem, falls back into this terrene. It's just one of the many evocative and irreverent lines you're about to hear. Now it's time for Richard's performance of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, page 75, line 1, to page 81, line 11, for the beginning of chapter 4. The performance was filmed and recorded at Type Books on Queen Street West in Toronto on January 22nd, 2024, with a live audience.
As the lion in our Tiergarten remembers the nenuphars of his Nile, Jalarios forget Arion, or Bogas the bare gams of the Marmazels from Armenier. It may be, tots were sense full of nagging and tentative sigil posted what in our breathing bust, the besieged bedreamt him still and solely of those Liliths unveiled, which had undone him, gone for age, and knew not the watchful treacherers at his wake, and theirs to stay. Fooey, chamber misses. Zippy, zoppy, lass and lads, sein. It may be, we most unhasten ourselves to declare it, that he reglimmed. Pre-saw? The fields of heat and yields of wheat were Cornwall, is it? Shamed and shone, it may be. We happen to upseek a bitty door our good township's Coran swan to renew it, with his deep-seeing insight, had not wishing after been but good time wasted, within his patriarchal shamana. Broad staying above city, 'twill be. He, conscious of enemies, a King Billy White horsed in a fingless mill, prayed, as he sat on anxious seat, couldn't ye nae gift me tope out a pair of soft eye baths, during that 3 and a hell of hours agony of silence, ex profundis malorum, and bred with unfeigned charity that is ward wounder, and angles to the teeth, who no mean Nash of Girahash would go any old word in the weeped wortle on his mottled belly, the rab, the creep-on's need, for milk, music, or married mistresses. Might, mercy to providential benevolences, who hates prudency's astuteness, unfold into the first of a distinguished dynasty of his posteriors. Black-faced Connemara's, not of the fold, but elder children of his household, his most besetting of ideas, his 12 predominant passions, being the formation, as in more favoured climes, where the meadow of honey is guest friendly and the mountain of joy receives, of a truly criminal stratum, hams, crib-cracking yeggs, thereby at last eliminating from all classes and masses with directly derivative decasualisation, Sigarius, sic, vindicat orbis terrorum, sicker. And so, to mark a bank tortiorter, the obedience of the citizens, the oath of the owl. Now go. Let us leave Theories there and return to Here's here. Now here, 'tis gold again. The teak coffin, pew glass panel fitted, feats to the east, was to turn in later, and pitly-patly near the purpose, materially affecting the cause. And this, lever, is the thing how. Any number of conservative public bodies, through a number of selected other committees having power to add to their number before voting themselves and himself, town, port and garrison, by a fit and proper resolution following a court's order of the ground wet, once and for all out of plotty existence, as a forest cut. So you made a skippy mighty a cut and other a new pack of clords. Made him, while his body still persisted, there present of a pro tem grave in Moyelta, of the best Loch Ness pattern, then as much in demand among Missinesians as the Isle of Man today among limnophobes. What, even? It was in a fairly fishy kettle kerry, after the Fiannas farmer had taken his handful, enriched with ancient woods in a dear dutty deeplands, mid which were an old knoll and a trout beck. Vady vein of a rosary and a chatty sally with any welter walter with angular, as Isaac did to the tickle of his rod. And watch her waters of her Scillian waters of, and there now brown Peter a ripple, may their quilt gilt lightly over his somnolent form, who for you lies his last by the wrath of bog, like the erst cursed hon in the bed of his true blue Donahue. Best, this was to have been underground heaven, or Mole's paradise, which was probably also an inversion of a fallow pharos, intended to foster wheat crops and a ginger-up tourist trade, its architect, Monsignor Pure de Chasse, having been obcecated he should petrify such an ever, while the contractors Messrs. T.A. Borkett and L.O.2 O'Haws were made invulnerably venerable. First and west, our Mr. Builder, Castle Villainous, openly damned and blasted by means of a hydramine system, Sown and Belton, exploded from a reinvented TNT bombing post up a high of 1130 in Ringrest, Surthiter, the stern out of his aerial torpedo, Dynamon, contacted with the expected minefield by tins of improved ammonia, lashed to her shield-plated gunwale and fused into trip-up tables, slipping through bolts and playing down from the conning tower down into battery-fused boxes, all differing from clocks from keys, since nobody appeared to have the same time of beard. Some saying by their airlog it was 6 to 9, more Halden with the Ryan Vocht it was Dane to 5. He afterwards, whenever his blade began to fail off him and his rough bark was wholly husky, and stoop by stoop he neared it, woodman spare, carefully lined the ferro-concrete result with rot-proof bricks and mortar, fast to fast, and retired beneath the heptarchy of his turrets, the bowshap, byword, bull and lion, the white, the wardrobe and bloodied, so encouraging. In step and all, Earl's heart's belief, additional useful counsels public, with hoofed off dealings which were well holden of lady counts to hurl out, such as the Breeders' Union, the Guild of Merchants of the State, Ep.016, to present unto him with funeral pomp. Over and above that, a stone slab with the usual Macpila address of valediction, a very fair worded instance of false meaning etymology. We have done ours, go health with you. Here, whippet, overgiven it, skidoo. But the house, and all aboard's hoops, show coffins, winding sheets, goodbye beer cheap cinerary urns, lie aloud glasses, snuff chests, patching tubs, lacrimal vases, hudden doses, reek water beckers, break middle zoot sacks for eat lust, including up your helping rookwurst and Mueller's having fork and pootsies, and for that matter Javel also. Yeah. Any kind of inhumationary bric-a-brac for the adornment of his glass stone hanophrium would, met these train of conditions, naturally follow, alas, in the ordinary course, enabling them round the world their wanderings wide, as such as pass him, to live all save at homely the pre-senile days of his life of opulence, ancient ere decrepitude, ladle length's last lenience, till stuffering stage, while in a way the whole of the while, hypnos tieli onion, lay the lulled between explosion and re-explosion, down our water, thunder thunder, from gross cup to megapod, embalmed of grand age, rich in death anticipated. But abides I'd summon serving, rise after fall, blue blitz bolted from there, knowing the hinge worms of the hallmarks of habitationlessness, buried burrowing in Gehinnon, to proliferate through all his underworld, seam by seam, shoal on shoal, and revisit our upper crust Siberia of utilitarius, the divine one, the harder, hidden, trapecutin is Pluto-popular progenium of pots and pans and pokers and puns, from Binland to Bottomland, the spearway for the sporeway. The other spring offensive on the heights of Abraham may have come about all quite by accident. Thought as runs her, for Brie de Brude had at length persuaded him to have himself to be as sepulchally buried as the murdered Kyon in Fintown, had not been 3 minutes in his watery grave. What vigilantes and ridings then, and spute-wide pledges with hard apple fritting, when putrefaction, dry-fussed as ever, began to ramp the boys a-parching. A hoodwinkle gave the signal, and a blessing paper fleed the flood. Why did the patrician make him scarce with his gruntings? Because the driven were muscatting at the door. From both Celtiberian camps, Grattan, at the onset, for the sake of argument, that men on the 2 sides in New South Ireland and Vitor Ula, blue men and pale faces, during a formant with the Pope or on the Pope, had more or less grand ideas, grunted. All conditions, poor cons and dies more, each of course on the purely defensive, since the Eternals were always on their side every time, were drawn towards Abelona's black bottom, once Woolwhite's waltz. Oh, he-ho, I'll be crying, be cursed, kissed, and be dumb to it. Some for want of proper feeding in youth. Others already caught in the honourable act of slicing careers for family and carvers in conjunction, and if emaciated enough, the person garroted may have suggested to whomever he took the ham of, the plain being involved in darkness, low sork waggery, nay, even the first old wugger of himself in the flesh, Regibus incarnadine, when, far-sighted by the if such he was bully on the hill. For there had circulated freely fairly among his opposition the feeling that in so hibernating Massa Iwaka, who previous to that demi-detached life had been known of barmicidal days, Cook said, between soups and savours, to get outside his own length of rainbow trout. And Tarsa to turn is no man and woman born. They could, like the great crested breed, devour his 70 pen of roach per life day. Aye, and as many men in a minute, the big mix made gibbet choke him, was, like the salmon of his ladder leap all his time of totality, secretly and by suckage, feeding on his own misplaced fat. Ladies did not disdain those pagan iron times of the first city, called after the ugliest Dana Dune, when a friend was a friend in need to carry, as earwigs do their dead, their soil to the earth ball where in death we shall come to climb, our legacy unknown. Venuses were gigglibly tempted tricks. Vulcans gaffably eruptuous, and the whole wise world flocked for the fickles. Fact, any human in you liked, any ere noon or after, would take her bare godkin out, or even pair of them. Blue God do, and prettily pray with him, or them even. Every he to her taste, long for luck, tap pet and take petter and take pettits the all, tip. Well she'd woo and well she'd win. But how the dear know where she'd marry? Arbour, bucket room, caravan, ditch, coach, carriage, wheelbarrow, dung cart. Kate Strong, a widow. Tip tip, She pulls a lame picture for us in a dreary dream setting, glowing and very visual, of old Dumpling as she nosed it, a home-like cottage of elven stone with droppings of biddies, stinkhead pussies, maggies, ducklings, rotten witchy wubbles, festering rubbishes and beggars' bullets, if not worse, sending some mafious germs in gleefully through the smithery panes, with how strong then, as her waker had turned him to the wall, tip, tip, tip. Dead most of all the scavenging from good King Hamlet's golden den, though her lean besom clean but certainly, and the bare statement reads that there be no macadamized side tracks on those old necropolitan nights in, barring a footbatter, Bryant's Causeway, bordered with speedwell, white clover and sorrelwood knolls, which left off being beaten where the plaintiff was struck. She left down, as scavengers who will be scavengers must, her filth dumped near the Serpentine in Fordix Park. At her time called Finewell's keepsaker, but later tossed Pat's Porch. That Dangerfield circling Butcher's Wood, where fireworker O'Flaherty engaged another Castle Mallard, and Arthur Archer stuns Turk, all over which fossil footprints, boot marks, finger signs, elbow dints, breech bowls, ASO were all successively traced of a most involving description. What subtler time place of the wild, and such wolves belly castrum into will, I'd a lever from Thorman's brandy hands, or a love letter, lostfully hers, that would be lust on ma. Then, when ructions ended, then here, when race began, and by 4 hands of forethought, the first babe of reconcilement is laid in its last cradle of Hume, sweet Hume. Give over it. And no more of it. So pass the pick for trial's sake. Oh, men, we're here, all high sprack for Christians as for propaganda fiddies. And his nuptial eagles sharp their beaks of prey, and every mortal man of us, poem by poem, falls back into this terrene. As it was, let it be, says he. And it is as though where Agniara flammed, and Mithra admonished, and Shiva slew, as Maya muttereth the alluvial waters of our Noachic memory withdrew, windingly go harksome to some hasty swayseed timberman, torch priest, flame and fan, ward of the wind that lightened the fire that lay in the wood that Jove bulked in his rude word. Possidonius, O Fluxury, leave that bloody stone where it is. What do you do with your dirty bigs? At his big tree block way up your path, slip around you by the round of his ministers, and you take that barrel back where you got it, McShane's, and go the way your old one went, Atchetsbury Road, and dish how they gushed away, the penny fares, a whole school for scamper, with their sashes flying sish behind them, all the little pearly pets, Issy La Chapelle, any lookins, please. Yes, the viability of vicinals, if invisible, is invincible. And we are not trespassing on his cords either. Look at all the plotch. Fluminian. If this was Hannibal's walk, it was Hercules' work, and 100,000 of the unemancipated slaved away. The mausoleum lies behind us. Oh, I'm going to guess the multi-populi Peter. And there are milestones in their jade millions faltering along the train's track by Brahman and Thundermis, per omnibus secular secularum. Amen. But the past has made us this present of a Reedar Road. Some more Boher O'Connell. Though rainy hidden, your rhino hide. And if he's not a Romeo, you may scallop your hat. Wear up under the fane of St. Fiacre. Halt.
That was Richard Harte reading the beginning of Finnegans Wake Chapter 4, recorded live at Type Books on Queen Street West in Toronto on January 22nd, 2024. Join us for episode 17 in a fortnight when Richard continues Chapter 4 of Finnegans Wake. In the meantime, to be sure you don't miss the episode, why not follow or subscribe to this podcast? For For more on One Little Goat's Finnegans Wake project, including transcripts of this podcast and the complete films of chapters 1 and 2, visit our website at onelittlegoat.org. And to hear about upcoming performances and screenings, please join our mailing list, also on our website. One Little Goat Theatre Company is a non-profit, artist-driven, registered charity in the United States and Canada that depends on donations from individuals to make our productions, including this one, possible. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation through our website, www.onelittlegoat.org. Finnegans Wake is made possible by friends of One Little Goat Theatre Company and the Emigrant Support Programme of the Government of Ireland. Thank you for your support. And thank you to the artists for this episode: Richard Harte, sound by William Bembridge, stage management by Sandi Becker, directed by yours truly, Adam Seelig. A big thanks to Claire Foster and the staff and owners of Type Books, as well as to our wonderful live audience. Thank you to everyone at the Irish Consulate in Toronto, and thank you to production consultants Cathy Murphy, Andrew Moodieand Shai Rotbard-Seelig. Thank you for listening.